It's my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Benjamin de Loenen. Ben. He is the executive director of iSeers. This NGO has been doing amazing work. Perhaps you have heard recently of the World Ayahuasca Conference, which was held in Rio Branco in the Brazilian Amazon. Ben has a background as a filmmaker, but since many years he's involved in the field of psychedelic research. And one of the branches that iSeers is developing is the ADF, Ayahuasca Defense Fund. So now we're not going to talk about ayahuasca and healing, ayahuasca's potentials in treating PTSD, depression, social anxiety, and another series of ailments. But we're going to talk about ayahuasca in jail, ayahuasca and thousands of dollars in legal fees, ayahuasca and legal trauma related, and all the amazing work that the ADF is doing under the pioneer vision of Ben, who is an idealist and is also a person that makes things happen. So thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, it's an honor to be here. I want to thank the organizers for the invitation. And I hope to share in this 20 minutes a bit of insight into ayahuasca legal prosecution. And so basically the presentation, the insights are really not just mine, but are from a team that we brought together in 2014 at the first World Ayahuasca Conference into this program we now call Ayahuasca Defense Fund, which is not just only about ayahuasca, also other teacher plans. No? And this presentation we built together with Bia and Constanza, my colleagues. So basically, we all know that to an increasing amount of people in the world, ayahuasca has become an important means to connect with their spirituality, overcome life difficulties, to do healing, and of course, to a lot of indigenous tribes in the Amazon, it's a central and crucial practice in their culture. And a lot of them are now, of course, traveling more and more outside of the traditional territories and bringing their culture to other places of the world. No? And as we see that occur, unfortunately, there's more and more legal problems or legal incidents happening around the world. And when we see that, of course, some questions come up, like why do they occur, and what can we learn from them, and above all, what can we do about them, and what, as Ayahuasca Defense Fund, have we been trying to do in respect. So, to give you a bit of an insight into this scope of legal issues, I made a little map. I made this presentation from Mac, which later on became a bit of a problem, so I'm sorry if some of it doesn't show right. But basically, in the Americas, this is a bit the legal incidents we see. These are not just arrests. Sometimes there's police confiscations, sometimes a police investigation that started. So you can see that in the US and Argentina, there's been the most incidents. And the one in yellow are the ones we've been helping with. This is sometimes just in the beginning that people need support and some advice. And with some cases, we worked really all the way through the end. And so, if we look at the European continent, you can see that really about legal incidents, it's Europe first, no? And so there's many more, but things shift sometimes. All of a sudden, in a country where there was not much happening, there's a lot of arrests occur. And also here you can see that the yellow dots is where we've been actively working with. And these are cases that we are aware of, so probably there's more, but this is a bit the scope. And just today there was a new arrest in Madrid that occurred. So if you look at the time, so until 2008 there were just quite a limited amount of arrests, and then from 2009 really there's been a big increase. No? And Spain was responsible for this big part, 46 arrests. And so, we have seen that it's really extending and there's more and more arrests happening and incidents around the world. So if you look at the last few years, it shifts a bit. 2016 was a year with quite a lot of situations, and now 2017, you should make it 7 today. So it started strong with legal incidents. So of course, we all know that there's a lot of expansion in ayahuasca use, but there's no real data about it. So it's very difficult to analyze how the increase in arrest really relates to the increase in ayahuasca use. And so what's important also to know is that there's two types of processes. Now, one is administrative, where basically a group can apply and to be granted the right, legal right to use ayahuasca. And then there's something else which is not the same, is recognition of religious status, where basically church can be recognized as a church, like in Spain you have a few, but they don't really have a license for ayahuasca. And then you have the legal processes, where there's a police intervention, sometimes there's no accusation at the end, and there it stops. Sometimes it goes to, there's an accusation, but it's dropped before the trial. And most often, it really leads to a whole court case, which is generally a very painful and long process. Sometimes also the party itself, they sue the government after they don't agree with the administrative process outcome. And so what are the global trends we're seeing? We're seeing clearly that there's a geographic diversification. There's each time more countries where legal incidents are occurring. Russia was also recently at 2 quite close to each other. Israel at 2 at the same time. And we also see that there's a coordination between countries. So shipments, for example, sent from Peru to Spain, they go through Germany, and it is the German authorities who inform the country of destination, like, hey, there's an illegal shipment coming. So it's really important also where the shipments go through. So sometimes in the country of destination, it's not really illegal, but then, in the country where it passes, it is, and that's where the problem comes. There's also this very big fear around new psychoactive substances, legal highs, research chemicals, substances we don't know much about. There's no human use, for years, and there's no research. And ayahuasca and the other traditional plants are increasingly being sucked into that category. And that leads to a problem, because sometimes countries, they just decide to put a whole bulk of new substances on the list, and then, there's all these new molecules, and then ayahuasca is on that list. And sometimes, like the UK, they just put a blank ban, and now everything that alters consciousness is illegal. No? So that's also addressing ayahuasca. There was a very recent publication in a scientific journal about hospitalization, and then so they start to treat this in these publications as intoxication by ayahuasca. So they start to understand the effects of the plant really as an intoxication, and these publications, of course, are a bit bad news, for future legal defense. And then there's an increased amount of churches here, specifically in the US, trying to achieve legal recognition. And something nice to see is that more and more around cases you see networks of solidarity being built. You see public crowdfundings even to raise funds for the defense. So there's a sense of solidarity which is at the basis of our Ayahuasca Defense Fund program as well. So how does it look like if you go to court? What are the main strategies and topics? So the first thing we always have to take into account, and that's what puts these plants in a very different environment than the other more classical psychedelics, is that these plants are not illegal under international control. They're not don't fall under the 1971 convention, which you can see here in the letter obtained by the UN in 2010. So no plants or concoctions containing DMT are illegal. Same with peyote, cactus versus mescaline, etc. So there's space there, to maneuver. So that means that countries on a national level can have the space to make these plants illegal, no? But there's just there's few countries that really have a specific ban. I'm not going to go into this, but I invite you all to go to our website, for the Ayahuasca Defense Fund, which is defendayahuasca.org, and there's a list of country information where you can look into, and every month we upload new countries. So I invite you to go there. And so one very important thing is, of course, it doesn't make sense to a lot of judges. Why is ayahuasca not illegal under international law and there's no specific ban, but DMT is? Doesn't make sense. No? So what we see is that prosecutors very much just basically extract one molecule out of this very complex cultural practice. So we try to emphasize this whole cultural phenomena around it. No? I made a little video to kind of show a bit how that discourse goes. So yeah, basically that's a bit the idea, no? And I want to clarify, I'm not suggesting we should ban all chemical drugs and that those are bad, no? I don't make any judgment, but what's clear is here in these court cases that this whole cultural dimension to which is very ancient, much more ancient than the drug control system, is very much in conflict with this drug control system, no? So this is, and in practice, in a court case, I just have a 1-minute fragment of a prosecutor giving his interpretation of what this is really about, no?
Promueven, incitan y distribuyen en forma coordinada y sistemática cantidades relevantes y riesgosas para la salud de drogas ilícitas, psicoactivas, que además tienen propiedades alucinógenas y que por si fuera poco no tienen ningún tipo de intencionalidad altruista, sino que por el contrario lo realizan con un clarísimo fin de lucro, como ocurrió con los acusados. La dimetiltriptamina está prohibida en cuanto a su elaboración, distribución, uso y consumo. Es una sustancia tremendamente riesgosa si se ingiere. No posee uso terapéutico alguno conforme a la ciencia. No existen estudios recientes sobre ella para darle seguridad. E incluso podrán hablar de las bondades de esta pseudo denominada terapia. Esto confirma la tesis del Ministerio Público. Existe una baja percepción de los consumidores debido a su ignorancia y debido al aprovechamiento de los acusados de este discurso por la naturaleza.
So this is from a fragment of a documentary I made, which I have some copies here in our booth downstairs if you're interested. It's called Ayahuasca Reframed. And so basically this is the predominant discourse of prosecutors in court cases, no? And so the other important thing that he says is there's no science. And this is also something you see very much. We don't know, we have no idea, it's dangerous. So science is a very big, important tool, no? And it's clear in this conference that it's an important part of the story. So part of the whole cultural dimension, we bring in the whole scientific dimension about the effects, about the safety, the potential benefits, as well as concentrations of DMT, where in the analysis the government often does, there's a lot of technical mistakes, so we also address that. And then religious freedom in some countries for some groups is the way to go. No, Defend the UDV was the first one in the US to achieve a license from the DA on a national level. Then there's now also 2 other diamond churches in 2 states that have legal recognition. Also Holland, Brazil, religious use is protected. But the last occurrence in Europe was actually a negative one. This is from the European Court of Human Rights. There was a Dutch church that lost the case. They decided to bring it to this European court, and the court didn't accept the case. Instead, they filed this report. It's not legally binding, but it sets a bit of a negative guide, saying that the risks involved in taking ayahuasca are far greater than the importance of religious freedom. And so we are now seeing in Holland a lot of recent arrests, and I think this document might maybe influence in that. And then the last thing is personal use. Of course, in many countries, personal use of a substance is considered very different in giving to third parties. But in Spain, there was maybe half a year ago a case that one which is of Asociación La Maloca, the first non-profit user association model for ayahuasca, and they defended on shared personal use, which is something that now also in Italy, from what I understand, is a recognized concept. So that's also a way of defense in some cases. So how do we define success in legal defense? No, there's a whole variety. It goes from a person, having charges reduced to really a supreme victory. And so there's everything in between of that. No, we've been seeing a lot of successes of different scales. I think it's always important to take into account the context. In some countries, because of the laws, it's more difficult to have really a big success in the outcome. But it's also important, I think, in terms of success to consider things like influence of public opinion or of policymakers or some key people in the defense course was achieved. Also building a support network with the community, the development of materials and arguments that are worked around that then serve other cases. And all of that goes beyond the case itself. So these are important outcomes of each case, really, as well. And then to end some of the challenges we face, we get in touch with lawyers or defendants. They get a lawyer locally, they contact us, and then they really think, like, who are these people? What can they help me? I'm a lawyer, I know the law in my country. And it's sometimes difficult to really get their trust, to really form a team. And when that happens, and we really work together, I feel it always has a positive outcome on the case. Also, sometimes for years, legal systems go slow, so nothing happens, and then sometimes we lose contact with the defendant, so we always try to keep in touch and know everything that's occurring. We have selection criteria, because of course some people really have problematic practice. Sometimes there's really an unethical thing around the case. So do we want to get involved until what level? That's sometimes a challenge. So along the way, working with defendants, we kind of learn who we have on the other side. No? Sometimes there's a very high cost of defense, and that might limit the resources. Sometimes there's been cases where two groups have arrested at the same time, but then there's a difference. They don't really work together. They don't communicate. So some of these underlying community dynamics can make it also harder to really build these support networks. And then sometimes we've heard criticism like, yeah, but why don't you just defend all the psychedelics? No? And as I told earlier, our mission here is really focusing on traditional plants with a very big cultural dimension to it, that are not under international control, and really, instead of getting them out of illegality on the international level, we want to avoid them from getting really into that and really being, clearly made illegal. No? I just want to emphasize there's no legal certainty in most of the world. No? So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that just, it's not under international control, so do it everywhere. So to end, I just basically want to invite all of you to join forces. No, the Ayahuasca Defense Fund is meant as a network of solidarity, and we need everybody in the community to collaborate, to join forces, so that together we can really change all of these challenges into opportunities towards sensible policy. So thank you very much, and I want to also acknowledge everybody who supported us until now. Without their support, it wouldn't have been possible to get where we are. Thank you.
Questions? You can come here. Perhaps we can have.
You can keep it on, no? Maybe.
Okay. No, you can keep it on. Yeah. But questions?
There.
Can you come here? Do you mind coming? We're filming. Everything is on live stream. psychedelicscience.org/live.
On your map, you had, I think, 3 cases in Portugal, and I believe the drug laws there are quite relaxed, so I was quite interested to see that. Any comments about Portugal?
Well, a lot of people don't really know that in Spain also the drug laws are very relaxed. The drugs are possession for personal use, and personal use of any drugs is decriminalized in Spain as well. It's been always like that, so that's why people don't know. And you've seen that in Spain there's been the most arrests, no, or legal incidents. What is important to also look at is the outcome. So, for example, of all these Spanish cases, there was one person who pled guilty out of fear, and then not going to jail, no, out of making a plea. And the other ones, either one based on personal use, or really the judges recognized ayahuasca as not illegal in that country. So also it doesn't mean that when there's a legal incident that people end up in jail, and that's something I want to clarify. No? Very often, most of the cases are really related to shipments. So it's shipped by post, and then customs stops it. Some, as I said, go to Germany. I think one of them went through Germany, and then there's an interception. So a lot of factors play. It's not just the drug laws in the country itself. No? So.
And then in the U.S., I think there were 3 dots there.
There's more than 3. There's been more, yeah.
How many of those were related to shipments? Issues around shipments. Were there any of those?
A couple of them. Here, of course, you had several incidents with the churches, no, UDV, and Daime as well, where there was an interception and then a raid, no, following in the home. Okay. There's been some other cases as well. Generally, case is starts with the shipment. So the police, gets hold of the shipment, and then the next step might be raiding the home, or in some cases they're more polite. There's been, for example, in Belgium one and in Switzerland, where then instead of the ayahuasca they get a letter saying, please, we think you're doing something illegal. Can you please come to the office, to the station, and we want to do an interview. So that all, depends where it at the end leads to. So
Right.
that's different. Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like seems like there's been a successful prosecution in the US so far that I'm aware of, where somebody's been successfully prosecuted for an ayahuasca-related charge that you know of, where there's been an actual case that's been successful and the person has received a sentence in the US. I'm not aware that there has been one. I guess that's a question. Have you?
Well, the ones we were involved in, at the end, one didn't lead to an accusation, a formal accusation, so it was dismissed. The other one was a bit strange. It's a case from several years ago, where really the prosecutor was saying it was all DMT, like the whole weight, and that happens in other countries as well, no? It's important. So they confiscate the bottle, they weigh it, and then they say all of that weight is DMT, but of course it's just a very, very small percentage of that. So this person, I don't know by memory how much it was, but like 1.5 kilos of DMT was the accusation. At the end, he didn't go to jail as well, so it's interesting. The outcomes so far have been quite mild or positive here.
I would like to make a question myself. Can you tell us a little bit about the cases of José Campos in France and the case of Russia and the case of Israel? These are the cases that the ADF has been very active.
Yeah, so Don José Campos is quite a famous ayahuasquero. No? He was arrested in France along with somebody else on the road. So they were in a car, and so basically they were facing, serious. I mean, in France, ayahuasca is illegal. No, specifically the plants and the concoction is illegal. But at the end, we managed to really quickly get a very, very experienced lawyer on the case, and in negotiations, basically, he was allowed to go back to Peru, so he's in his country now, awaiting trial. But that's really special. No, we didn't expect that to occur. So that's the current state. Then there's been 2 cases at the same time in Israel. Now, one ended with a plea bargain of community service, and the other one now also is just closing with the same thing. Which it's maybe too long to really get into the details, but I think it's a successful outcome, and I think sometimes when it ends with a plea bargain where they basically say, yes, I declare guilty, and I just get like 5 months of community service and that's it, that's sometimes not the end station. So all of the work and everything that was aligned in the defense of that case then really can be continued without the whole pressure of a criminal court case, no? And so that's probably part of the next steps in these countries. I think that's something to consider. Then the other case I can't talk much about because it's still open and not much. But basically, we discovered that in Russia, ayahuasca is clearly illegal. So there's a Brazilian person who was arrested, and there's been a second arrest in Russia as well. That person will be condemned, and then the hope is that we can manage for him to be extradited to Brazil, where of course in Brazil it's recognized, or the religious use is protected, and then see what can be done there. So that's a bit the status.
Can you tell us a little bit about the community forum that the ADF is co-hosting here on Psychedelic Science?
Yeah, there's I think it's Sunday, but I don't know the exact time.
Huh? Tomorrow?
Or Saturday, what time? 2 o'clock tomorrow. There's a community forum that we're hosting here, basically to discuss all of these things, like the legality aspects of it, best practice as well, and really as a community looking at all of those aspects. So I invite all of you to come there and share. It's meant to be an interactive session. It's really something we see in our legal defense work, of course, is when people are responsible, when they really are well organized, when there's a sense of responsibility and ethics and transparency, that in court really makes a difference, no? And so I think as a community also, it's important to show that there's a sense of responsibility and that this is really not becoming a public health problem and something authorities should be afraid of, but really, organizing and really interacting to see how can we advance that in the right direction. So that's, something I will be addressed in the community forum.
Yeah, please. Can you come here? We're live streaming, and
two more
can you come here and line up? And I'm sorry, I'm making questions because nobody's raising their hands, but the mic is open. No, but here, come up here because the questions are here, and say your name, please.
My name is Lorna Lee, and one thing I find really interesting is that in a country like Spain, where personal use of drugs is decriminalized, there are so many criminal cases, and it sounds like a lot of the criminal cases are coming from shipments going, that are getting picked up at other countries' borders. So for medicine carriers who are going to countries where the drug laws are much more relaxed and there's personal use protection, what is the best way to transport medicine?
Well, I think the best way to transport medicine is really to first do your research. That's what I would say, and really know where you're going to. If you're going to do a shipment to a country where it's not really illegal, make sure that you know where it goes through, because, as I said, that kind of creates problems. It's a bit of a difficult question. It really depends. There's many different factors, but I would say, do your research basically, and then really, validate and see where you're getting into, and what the reality is in the country of destination.
Can you give the link of the legal map again?
Yeah, so that's what. So do your research. Is also go to the website defendayahuasca.org. So there's a lot of information there, and as I said, every month there will be new countries added. What are the precedents, past cases? What does the law say? And really, some insights to really know what is the situation there. No, there's a lot of confusion, around this. Like, is it DMT? Is it not? Some people, they transport it. They say it's like a bad product for their reuma or whatever. Some really say it's ayahuasca. So, there's many factors. But I think, first of all, you should really need to know what are the rules and what is the legislation in the place you're going to.
You mentioned two countries, I think it was Spain and Portugal, that have or maybe even recognize professional associations of ayahuasca practitioners. Can you speak more about that?
Well, this is so in Spain. Something that happened in Spain years ago is that because drug use is decriminalized, personal use, and out of the heroin epidemic, actually, they recognized something that's called collective purchase, or where a group of users. Sometimes one would go off, buy heroin for his 50 friends, so he had like 50 grams, and then the police intervenes, and they say, you're a drug dealer. So no, this was a collective purchase. Actually, only 1 gram is mine, and the others is from the others. So that concept was then recognized from in a court, and out of that came the cannabis social club model. So we have like maybe 1,000 cannabis social clubs in Spain, which is based on the fact it's closed circle, so people know each other, and they can only become a member if they know somebody is already a member. There's no profit, so they basically cultivate, and then they have their share of the cultivation, and they use inside that place together. So that came out of the cannabis, social club, and then now there's maybe 3 clubs or association, non-profit user associations, for Amazonian work, no? So they're working with ayahuasca and with some of the other traditional plants, which is an interesting model because, of course, it's private. There's a big sense of community. They really are organized together, no? So it's a model we've been looking into very much and working around to see if that can be a policy model maybe for use.
I'm interested about if there's a mental health practitioner in the United States that wants to refer a client to some kind of treatment program, let's say in Mexico where ayahuasca is illegal and that client gets into some legal problem. Can the referring practitioner get in trouble for that? Are you aware of any cases?
Well, it's difficult territory. I think you probably should talk to a lawyer specialized in the U.S. legislation about that. I'm not a lawyer myself, no? I'm kind of directing the foundation, but we have lawyers in our team. But it depends. I mean, people can sue you. Of course, it's risky terrain, I would say, but people are doing it, no? So.
Big applause to Ben Loenen.
Thank you very much. And there's